All right, welcome to the Breathing Edge podcast. I have one of my favorite people on our Energized Leader interview series today. His name is Brett Jarman, and there's lots of different reasons why he's my favorite. One, he does a really great job with being able to put into words what we do in the breathing space and in business and such. But he's got a great personality where he always has a really great outlook on things and can take it's like he takes some an experience in and he spins it and puts it back out in such a way where you go, oh, it's not so bad.
Reframing.
Oh yes, there you go, master reframer.
I'm ready.
So Brett Jarman, he's CEO and founder of Experts on Air and the Help Me Leverage team as well. So he's our podcast producer, but he does help people leverage their authority marketing online through podcasting. So he helps experts build their reputation and personal brand as an authority in their field so they can attract and acquire profitable customers more easily. So the way that he teaches techniques and implements them is that it's to leverage the time so you can focus on generating, revenue and things that you really want to be doing, and then just building the authority in the background so that way it kind of like works without you. And I think that that's something that most people, I didn't even know that there was somebody out there existed that does what you do. And I tell you one thing, I've been eternally grateful. We've been working with you for the last almost 12 months now, I'd say.
Almost, yes. Yes,
yeah.
It is. Yeah.
And look, as far as leadership goes, I don't think that there wouldn't be anybody out there that's leading their business that wouldn't need to also be able to translate what they do and how they do it and their genius across to other people. And that's what you do, Brett, because for us, we came into, even as confident as we are in our abilities to breathe, we came into this going, what if, I did, I was like, what if people think what I say is stupid or they don't get it, and you've really helped us to understand and capture that message and then be able to bring it across. So, we are really grateful to you. And just tell us a little bit more about how you see what you do and what you do for people.
Okay, well, I'll use you guys as an example because you're a perfect example of that. It's a surprise to me. It's only 12 months ago that we were downstairs right where you guys are now. And you guys were still kind of scratching your heads trying to think, could a podcast really work? You know that podcasts themselves work, but how did you fit into that thing? And what could we say about breathing? It's like you breathe in, you breathe out, and then that's it. So we kind of rattled around some ideas, and since that time, there's been no shortage of material, no shortage of people that you can interview, and so on and so forth. So for me, I get a lot of joy out of just working with people at that level and helping them. Because the thing is, we take a lot of our knowledge for granted, and people don't realize just how interesting they are, and how many stories they've got to tell, and how many questions other people have about what it is that they do. And so just helping them on that journey, getting them underway and putting them in a position where they can, share their gifts, their knowledge, their information and their stories to others. That's a real joy for me. And I'll just go back to your point that you made, Angie, where you said you didn't know there were people like us doing what we were doing. We didn't know there was either. Like we thought we were filling a need. As it turns out, there are other people who, I thought everyone just produced their own podcast, but then I thought, well, what if someone were to do it for them? There are other businesses doing it, but the need, I just saw a need there, and so we kind of went out and created the podcast network, the production team, and the methodology, which is all about, as you say, helping people like you do what you do best. So you're not bogged down writing blog posts and doing the PR. You're actually doing what you're gifted at doing.
Yeah, and that's been a huge thing for us, because one thing that I notice is that, you don't even know where to get started in a podcast. It's like, you want to get out there and you want to get your stuff out there and you want to talk, especially, people who love to talk, and we love to talk. So it's like, where do you start? And I loved, because, that first meeting, you walked away and sent us like with a strategy plan. And I nearly cried when I watched the strategy plan. I was like, these are things that I've been wanting to do, but I haven't been able to articulate it in such a way that you did. And in the way that you did, like simple steps, I recommend doing this, I recommend doing that, and this, that. And then when we got started in the podcast, you interviewed us as part of our first podcast. Okay, most people don't understand where to get started. So how about let me give you a blueprint on where to get started, and we'll start off with an interview so you can, kind of get what you want to get out there first. And then, here's also a list of like your next 12 episodes that we recommend that you do. And I was like, oh, well, this is going to be a lot easier than we thought.
Well, it's a bit easier for us too, because for the people that are listening, what you probably don't know is that we're also on a board together with Brett. We're on a board of a group of entrepreneurs, and the thing about sort of what we've seen from the inside, and Brett handling our stuff as well, and what we do know, and Angie touched on it before, is that probably the biggest problem that most people come up against, Brett, would be that it's that first step. And so you've had to get in there and actually help people with their whole strategy, not only just their strategy around authority, but the strategy around what is it that I do, and how do I do it?
That's an important part of it. It's like a lot of people, when they start off with this, they have an idea about a podcast in the same way that they have an idea that they want to write a book one day. They've got no idea what that book's going to be. And so it stays on their someday maybe list for years and years and years. And so for me, in fact, that's the real joy for me, is that sort of initial spark. Like on Roger Hamilton's wealth dynamics profile, I'm my genius is I'm a dynamo genius. So my head's in the clouds, it's full of ideas. And so it's a real joy for me to work with people and just help them understand themselves better than they currently understand themselves, and what it is that they've got to offer. So it's so much fun for me to do that, and podcasts are the perfect medium to do it. And I just want to ask you, Angie, how easy is it for you guys now to do the podcasting thing? Like, is there any drama behind it? Is it as easy as
It is,
it's a lot easier. It's a lot. I'll tell you one thing. I think what it was is getting into rhythm first.
Yeah.
So it's like, you get those first few episodes out, and it's also about being I want to say disciplined, but it's
dedicated.
Like it's dedicated. Dedicated to your message. Yeah. Dedicated to what you're doing, dedicated to the podcast, and it helps to have somebody like you on the other side going, hey, knock, 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 where's your next episode?
Well, exactly. Yeah. So you guys are actually at an advantage relative to other people who are producing their own podcasts, because you're putting money on the table each month, and it's up to you to get your money's worth. You've got to produce the episodes. Whereas most people, in fact, very few podcasts actually get past the first 7 episodes. Number one, because they don't have a strategy. Number two, because they don't have a plan. Number three, because they don't have the commitment to go the distance. And so even though there's somewhere between 500,000 or 750,000 podcasts out there, the vast majority of them aren't being touched. In fact, I saw a stat the other day, said something like 75% of podcasts have not produced an episode in the past 3 months. So you guys have done it the right way. You've got this built-in accountability, because we've got this professional relationship set up. And so we're here to keep you honest, keep you motivated, keep you on track with your content, and it seems to be working for all of us.
Yeah, I think the thing probably the most difficult thing is actually scheduling and finding the time to actually do it, because you have you have laid out the schedule for us. It's all there. It's just that we've got to get in and start doing it. But what that has done for us, it's done 2 really major things. One, it's got us to really drill down and simplify what it is we do, so that we can deliver that message to people. And it's actually fun, because now if we're talking about something or we do something at an event, we're like, oh, well, let's do a podcast on that, because that's what people want to know about. So it starts to help you formulate what is it that your listeners or people that are listening out there want. The second thing is it makes it so much easier to approach people and say, hey, I want to interview you on my podcast. And people love to be interviewed. So, you know, people that you probably wouldn't think, oh, how am I going to get a meeting with that guy? Or, you know, like, how would I ever be able to get a meet? I mean, you go with a podcast invite to people, and straight away people are like, oh, wow, yeah, I'd love to be interviewed on your podcast. And then you can talk, you know, business with them. You even start to we've formed partnerships with people that have come from our podcast. So it's been an invaluable tool. And I've even noticed now, Brett, I don't know if you've seen this yet, but we have sent some invites to some people for their podcast. They even screen you now on, like, you know, how many episodes have you done?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so
if we ask people to come on our podcast, they're like, okay, well, is your podcast worthy of my time?
Yeah, yeah. So
No, some people do have very strict criteria, and rightly so, because you know, like there is a time commitment, and people are leveraging their guest reputation. So there's a two-way dynamic. It's it's an important thing.
Yeah, well, I've definitely found that it's a little bit of there's a little bit of a community, like a podcasting community. You know, some people that we've spoken to that they've been like, oh, well, I'll get you guys on these guys' podcasts, and they'll get you on that podcast.
Well, as you guys know, I also have shares in a podcast booking agency.
Yes.
And my partner, Nat, she lives down in Melbourne. She's going to a podcasters meetup tonight that she's organised. I think it's 15 or 30 people are going to turn up for that. So yeah, it's a very very dynamic and interesting community.
Wow. And so, Brett, what are you working on right now?
Right now, building the network itself. So we've spent the last 2 years probably getting to where we are, sort of learning the ropes about how to get people on board, what's the ideal product mix, and we still haven't quite got that right, to be honest. So in fact, we had a strategy meeting on that yesterday, and I'm pretty sure we've sort of nailed how we can offer something that suits people at very different levels in their sort of promotional journey, so to speak. So because what we were finding was that a lot of people, we weren't able to serve them simply because they couldn't afford it. So we've got some new products coming on. We will be able to help them with that. So that's our thing, and just sort of generating a rhythm so that we can bring people on. It's quite sort of labour intensive getting someone started. So our next move will be employing producers in the business. So that'll take a bit of the load off me, and then we'll be in a better position to scale. So to answer your question briefly, just setting ourselves up so that we can scale more.
Great. So that basically keeps you available to do what your genius is, which is that creative dynamo energy. Now, I wanted to ask you a question. So what is it that you do? Because being highly creative, how do you manage your energy around being highly creative? Because I know sometimes it can be exhausting being creative, and sometimes it can be fueling being creative. So how do you manage that?
Well, one of the things I've learned over the years, and it took me a long time to do it. So this time, probably 10 years ago, I would have been calling myself a copywriter. That was what I was doing to earn most of my income, and it was hard work because it was for a lot of corporates, you know, producing reports and a bit of research involved, and the creative side of it. It can be really draining when you've got a deadline. And so one thing that I've learned probably over the last 2 years is that I'm at my creative best when I'm not under pressure. Well, there's two sides to it. When I'm not under pressure, I tend to work my best. But sometimes when I am under pressure, I can pump something out really quickly, and it kind of surprises me. Oh wow, that came out quickly. But it depends on where the pressure's coming from. Like if it's coming from outside, I find that hard to deal with, and I'll often have to walk away from a job and come back to it at a later stage. Sometimes I'll sit on something for days on end, and I'll just kind of let it sort of brew in the back of my head, and little ideas will pop out, and I'll write some things on post-it notes and just stick them on a wall, and then at the end I'll sit back and see how it fits together. So the key for me has been just in managing my workload and not making sure that I don't take on too much creative work at once, and then I've got capacity to sort of dive in and out of it. And the last tip, or the last kind of thing I've learned, sometimes I'm at my best when I've had half a glass of red wine, and I've got a deadline. That's when things, it's when the rational part of the mind just tends to kind of step aside, and I become less fussy, if you like, and then things come out a lot easier then.
Yeah, I
don't use that strategy always though.
Well, if you think about it, I mean, it's like for me personally, it's kind of like it used to be a kind of like a signal for letting go, or a signal for relaxation. You know, it's at the end of the day, you can kind of sit and relax, or, you know, sometimes if it's on the weekend or something like that, might be, you know, just after lunch and you sit and relax, and then you can sort of work on strategy and these sorts of things where you don't have to be somewhere and look after this and be a perfectionist of that, you know, where you can actually just kind of like let go and go, let's see where this takes me.
What about routines, Brett? Like what do you do to keep yourself in those, like dropping in and out of those creative spaces, or into you know, critical thinking spaces throughout the day, as because you work from home like we do? So so I'm very lucky with that. I've been a long-term meditator. I first learned TM would be about 30 years ago now with my wife, and that's become pretty much twice daily every day for the last 30 years. Some days I might just do it once. And so that's my my saving grace, if you like, is just knowing that I've got that tool. If I'm flagging in the afternoon, up until I met you guys, that was my tool of choice. Nowadays, I've got breathing, which I can kind of layer on top of that. That's my sort of, if I don't feel I've got the time to meditate or the inclination, then I'll just pump out some 3 to 6 minute breathing exercises, and that'll sort of get me going again. So habit-wise, I'm an early riser. Sometimes, which it is by choice. Sometimes too early, but I'm kind of working on that. Working with an Ayurvedic practitioner to sort of help manage my sleeping a bit better. So because I get up early, I've got plenty of time to get a decent meditation underway, do some journaling, some reading. I'll often listen to an audio book. We've got a lighthouse here at Byron Bay, so I'll go for a run or a walk up there and listen to an audio book. Or sometimes I just won't listen to anything. I'll just let the mind let it be and just let it experience what's going on. So those things, I like to get 3 or 4 sessions of yoga under my belt each week. That's important to me as well. Flexible body gives you a flexible mind, in my experience. So they're probably the main things that I rely on.
Now, how does that transcribe into work? Like, 'cause I know you work with a team as well, and I mean, your daughter is also a part of your team, and you've got quite a team around you of people that you're working with. So by taking this time for yourself and managing your own personal energy, I've watched you grow even in the last 12 months, and how you've managed the team and networked with people. So how do you then use that to connect with team, and do you guys do anything as a team together, and what are some of those hot tips that you would suggest?
Right.
Together.
Okay. So
leadership stuff. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So probably my biggest leadership lesson at the moment is learning to step out of the business and let the team run with it. We're based in different geographic locations. I'm in Byron Bay. My daughter's on the Gold Coast, and we've got others in the Philippines. My a business partner in Melbourne. So we don't. In fact, we never have all been in the one place. It's on our list of things to do. But from a leadership point of view, my biggest thing that I'm learning is to step out and let the other people run their departments, run their tasks without my sort of interference, so to speak. And in actual fact, I'm taking the afternoon off this morning. I just decided that as I was doing the lighthouse walk, what, I don't feel like doing a full day today. I'm going to step out, and I'll just leave them to run things by themselves. And the thing that I'm checking in on myself is noticing the questions that come from them. In the past, I would answer them directly, like, okay, you need to do this, 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 and this. Nowadays, I'm more and more answering them with questions, and putting it back on them to come up with the solutions themselves. And yes, and in doing so, I'm making myself less of a hero in the business than I need to be, and more of a leader. So that's probably my biggest sort of leadership lesson that I'm learning, and I'm looking forward to totally nailing that. That's where the real freedom comes from.
I can agree. But that really resonates with me, being able to, because I mean, it's really easy for us to get kind of like stuck up in our ego and go, oh, come and help save the day. But when you can teach somebody to fish, then you don't have to always be there with them while they're fishing.
Is that a dynamite thing? Is that a dynamite thing?
Might be.
Is that a...
Yeah, I'm not sure whether it's a yeah, I'm not sure, to be honest, Shane. But at the end of the day, what it also does is it makes the work more satisfying for the team as well. They're no longer just robots who are following instructions. If they're actually able to apply their own critical thinking to their roles and take risks and make decisions on their own, at the end of the day, it just makes the work more satisfying for them.
Sensational. Now, I also want you to share something for that I think that is probably going to make an impact for a lot of leaders. Now, you have, in our discussions, you've talked about what you're optimizing your business for, and I just want you to share this with everybody about what you're optimizing for as far as your time off, because the rhythm that you've created, that you're working for, building your business to give you this rhythm. If you share a little bit about that.
Yeah. Okay. So my ultimate goal, and this will be by June the 30th, 2021, I'll have 1 day off a week, 1 week off a month, and 1 month off a year. And I was inspired by that to come up with that formula from Chuck Blakeman, who wrote the book. I think it was Why Employees Are Always a Bad Idea. It was either that book or his earlier book where he laid that out as his structure. And he set a specific date, and on that date, in fact, he said, on this date at this time, I will be boarding a plane going to New Zealand for 6 weeks, and the business will run without me. So that's my ultimate goal in terms of my time. But I also had that same goal for the team. Perhaps not the week and the month off a year as well, but certainly I want the team to be only working 4 days per week. We have tried that a couple of times. Beginning of last year, we started a 4-day week for everyone. Didn't quite work out just because we got too busy and we weren't ready for it. But it is certainly on my radar to have everyone working maximum of 4 days a week, and ideally a maximum of 5 hours per day on the screen. I think anything more than that, there's no need for it. And we've got enough tools and all these enhancements that have come into us in the last 15 or 20 years. There's no reason why anyone should be working a 40-hour week anymore. So that's my goal for me and for the team.
I agree with you there, and you've inspired me a lot because you have this very mechanical mind where you have something that you want or a goal in mind, and you look for the systems and processes that you can put into place to get you there. And I think that's something that most people don't think about. They just think, oh, I'm going to get there, and they kind of forget about the systems part, or try to do the systems but don't match the systems up with what they want moving forward. So how is it that, what are some of those triggers that come up for you that you go, oh, I need to write a system for that, or I need to do something to support this? Like, do you have a strategy around that?
Well, yeah, anytime I'm doing something that is going to be repeated in the business, that's when I look for, okay, what's the process to this? So I do think visually. So I tend to think either in mind maps or grids or matrices. So I'm always trying to see how can I fit something into a structure. It's sort of I won't say it's an intuitive thing, but it's kind of something that just comes naturally to me. So, but where I draw the line on, because you can overdo it. Like if I try to systematize everything, if there's something that I'm doing that I'm only doing on a one-off basis, then it doesn't make sense to have a system for that. So I'm always looking for, is this action going to be repeated in the business? Is it going to be repeated by me or someone else? And ideally, I do want it to be repeatable by someone else. So the very first thing I'm looking for is a framework. What are the steps that I've taken to get here? And often I find it's when I'm actually teaching something to someone, that's when I notice the framework that I've been using. So for example, at our board meeting a couple of weeks ago, I showed you guys how I write copy for sales pages. And that's something that I'd never really bothered to. I'd been following that process myself, but I'd never actually bothered to document it. But now that I've documented it, I can actually hand that off to some of the other writers that we're working with. So, because normally I do the sales copy, but now I've got a structure I can say to them, have a go at this and see if that works for you.
Oh, that's brilliant.
So Brett, why do you do all this? Like, what gets you out of bed in the morning? You know, we always ask everyone what juices them, why do you get out? Why have you got the business? Why are you doing it?
Yeah. Okay. So I get out of bed each day to bring more ease into the world. And I just like making things simpler. Doesn't really matter what it is. Doesn't have to be in business. But if I see something and I'm looking at it, I can see an easier way to do it, then I'm itching to get in there and get that done. So luckily I've been able to build a business around that. But if I wasn't in business, I would be doing something similar. I'd be tinkering away in some form or another, trying to make something easier for someone.
Yeah, you definitely do that. Anytime I've asked for help or needed something, you've always come through with a simple way of doing it. So I'm eternally grateful for
Good
you.
night. That's why I get up each day.
And before we wrap this up, Brett, I just want you to maybe give someone out there that's listening that's thinking about starting a podcast or wants to get started, what would you say would be the first 3 steps that you could recommend to someone to get started into a podcast or a series?
Besides contacting you, of course.
Yeah.
Sure. So contact me. The first thing would be to just be clear about what the function of the podcast is. So in your case, it was pretty clear. We wanted people to understand more about what breathing is, and ultimately to create more business for you, because it's a field that most people don't know about. So most people they've either got a business goal. Sometimes it might just be for a hobby. They've got a hobby and they just like talking about it, learning about it, and they want to build networks with it, and that's fine. That's perfect use for a podcast. It might be because they've got a creative, they've written a story and they want to share that. You can serialize books through podcasts. Doesn't matter what the reason is. So just be very clear what that reason is. Be clear who your audience is or who you think there might be. And that sounds pretty straightforward, but a lot of people do overthink it, and they try to think too broadly with their audience. And I can tell you now, the narrower you go, the more chance you have of success, because word travels fast in smaller networks. If you're trying to speak to everyone, it takes longer to be heard above the noise. But if you're talking to a specific audience, then word will quickly spread, and they'll share the word about you. And then the third thing I would say is get out of your way. Just stop telling stories about, oh, it's too hard, I don't know enough, I'm not smart enough. Shane and Angie, they're so much smarter than me, so of course it would work for them, but it wouldn't work for me. Most people would have a list of 20 or 30 excuses or reasons or justifications of why they cannot do or shouldn't do a podcast now, why it's going to come later. And if you are struggling with that, then definitely call me, because I could talk you through most of those things and show you that, honestly, if someone really wanted to get started, they could have a podcast up and running within 24 hours. There's enough resources out there, and you don't need a lot to do it. You just need a computer. We're talking on a computer, and there are plenty of blog posts out there that actually run people through it step by step. So get out of your own way would be my third and probably most important tip.
I would agree with you on there too, because there's quite a lot of people that we meet, like in the wealth dynamics profile, that are like the steel energy or the accumulator energy, where they want to have, yes, this one right here, where they want to do a podcast, but
fear of not getting it right.
Yeah. Yeah, and I must say, even looking at some of our earlier episodes and then looking at our episodes here, it's just like with anything, when you get started, you might feel your way through it, but then you get into a rhythm and a groove, and I think it's all about just being yourself, and allowing yourself to be who you are, and then allowing you to communicate that message on what you would like to convey to your audience. So those are brilliant tips.
Good.
Thank you.
My pleasure.
So what's the best way for people to be able to contact you?
So jump across to one of the websites. So helpmeleverage.com, helpmeleverage.com. My email address is brett@brett. You can hunt me down on LinkedIn. Easy to find me there. They're probably the two easiest ways. And our podcast network, you can find that on expertsonair.fm. That's where we proudly host the Breathing Edge podcast.
And our producer will probably add those links into the show notes as well.
Yeah,
No
and I would actually even look at and even looking at joining your group on Facebook too, because I know you do a lot of support there and connect with people on your Facebook group. So if I'm sure
Yes.
you put your links in the show notes there.
Yeah, we'll do that. We're about to rename that group. So yes, we'll I'm sure the producers will put in an updated link for that as well.
Brilliant. Well, thank you very much for taking your time to share your knowledge and your brilliant and your genius with us over, podcasting and getting started and what people need to do to market themselves in authority. So thank you so much for supporting us as well.
Thanks for having me on board, and thanks for all that you do, guys. Like I talk about the work that you do all the time, any opportunity I can. It's just such important stuff, and the more people that know about this breathing thing, the better. So keep it up.
Thank you.